Welcome, my dear students. This is going to be the second lecture of the 7th week. In the last lecture, we elaborated basically on biomedical waste. We started, deliberating on this particular issue, and we have seen that this biomedical waste is very sensitive one among the different wastes which is being generated. This is going to be very sensitive because it can contain, as I mentioned, that some of your infectious material, maybe semi-infectious material, and which is a resultant outcome of your during the treatment process, maybe during the diagnosis, as well as immunization is also going to be very important that we have seen. Apart from this, based on your research and development, so that will also contribute a huge amount of waste, this biomedical waste. And once we started talking on this particular issue, we have also elaborated the diverse segments of this particular biomedical waste and what is the challenge of handling this particular waste, because there are multiple impacts that is going to be impacted mostly on your ecosystem, and ecosystem services is going to be hampered, and also it is going to impact on the handlers, basically who is going to handle this particular waste material. So for them also it is a very important issue. So we are just going to extend that particular lecture what we delivered in the last class. We are just going to extend that particular part, and also we would like to see the biosafety regulations, and once what are those biosafety tiers. In different tiers we have within your this particularly handling this waste management. There we have to be very cautious about this particular issue, and at the same time we are also going to see the different the plans, because once we are going to address this issue of biomedical waste, definitely we have to have those sort of plans available, as well as the committees that who is going to enact on this or who is going to work on this, that composition as well as their functioning we are like to see it in today's class. So the contents will be, as I mentioned, that effects of biomedical waste on the environment and organisms, and definitely if it is being impacted on your environment and organisms, and ultimately the soil, water, plant and animal system is going to be impacted, and finally always the animal is going to be impacted mostly. And need of proper biomedical waste disposal, this has to be done with rationally, with having more suitable options, as well as some of those particular options which can be evolved out of that particular region or those conditions which is going to make these particular systems or this management more fruitful. That means we need to have that sort of systems in place which can address these, particularly with reference to with the existing infrastructure which is available. And at the same time, as I mentioned, that biosafety is one of the very important component, and the steps involved in biomedical waste management, because it's a multi-tier approach. So definitely there are multiple components in it, and the multiple individuals will be there, as well as whether you talk about policy, whether you talk about the individuals, whether you talk about infrastructure. So everything we are going to see on that particular part. So the first component already we started deliberating on this particular component in the last class, but just to make a summarization of what we have delivered mostly, that what are the effects of this biomedical waste on your environment. So improper management and disposal of your biomedical waste can have serious repercussions, and if these repercussions are going to build up, that means for a continuous number of years, definitely it is going to make many more hassles. So the first thing is soil contamination. So these hazardous substances from untreated biomedical waste, basically your chemicals and heavy metals and infectious agents, can seep into your soil, and if it is going to move into your soil, definitely it is going to impact its soil quality. The health of soil is going to be impacted very badly, and if your soil health is going to be impacted, definitely agricultural productivity is going to be affected. The next is your water pollution, and waste, if it is dumped into your water bodies, definitely it is going to lead to your contamination of your river, lake and groundwater, with toxins, pathogens and pharmaceutical residue. And these basically endangers your aquatic ecosystem and poses health risks to communities relying on these particular water sources, because ultimately it is going to be conveyed with that particular system and maybe sometimes maybe biomagnified as well. The third component is your air pollution. That means all your natural resources basically, that is going to be impaired. So air pollution, incineration of this particular biomedical waste, and basically if it is more of your plastic, definitely it is going to release some of your harmful gases like your maybe dioxin or furan, and which is going to impact or impair your air health as well, and into your atmosphere, contributing to your air pollution. And burning plastic and other non-biodegradable materials basically just exaggerated this particular component, and it is going to make further complications into what is existing one. And then harm to wildlife and ecosystems. This is also going to be a very, very important component, because if it is improperly managed, definitely this can going to harm your animals and can disrupt your ecosystem, and wildlife may ingest waste and leading to poisoning and physical injury as well if you have that sort of sharp material in it, because we have seen in that particular segments you have there are few components which are basically sharp or carcinogenic. So definitely that is going to impact on them. And public health hazards, this is particularly related to those particularly who is going to handle this particular waste. So improper disposal definitely creates breeding grounds of your pests like your flies and rodents, which contribute to the spread of multiple diseases. And these contaminants can also bioaccumulate, enter into your food chain and affecting your human health over time. So apart from that particular handling, so definitely this is going to, because if there is not properly it is being handled, definitely it is going to impact on their health, means who is handling that, as well as it is going to, if it is not properly managed, definitely it is going to impact the total system, and mostly your food chain is going to be contaminated. So if we just look at the health related issues basically which caused by your biomedical waste, so definitely we have number of different sort of waste, and which is going to be whether either some of them may be infectious, some of them may be semi-infectious, and some of them may be cytotoxic, some of them may be based on your some radionuclides may be there, and heavy metals may be there. So definitely based on that particular material what it is, and sharp materials like your needles and sort of or instruments sort of thing. So definitely based on that, so what sort of disease are being caused, and what is that particular organisms which is involved in that particular process, that we have seen through this table. So if it is basically your infected needles or body fluids or human excreta or soil linen or body blood or your body fluids, definitely it is going to these are the very important diseases, particularly whether you talk about AIDS or whether you talk about infectious hepatitis or maybe your dengue, Japanese encephalitis or tick-borne fevers like these. So these are all very deadly diseases, and the causal organism is either this HIV or hepatitis B or hepatitis A and C, or maybe arbovirus or maybe enterovirus. These are responsible for these. And mostly if it is bacteria dominated, because based on this particular dominance, whether you talk about your virus, whether you talk about bacteria or whether you talk about other parasites, definitely the ramification or the manifestation is going to be different. So if it is a bacteria mediated one, and mostly through your human excreta or body fluid in landfills and hospital wards basically, and sharps such as needles, surgical blades, which can through these particular bacterial species, maybe Salmonella, maybe Vibrio cholerae, maybe Clostridium, maybe Pseudomonas and Streptococcus, they can cause this number of diseases, whether you talk about typhoid, whether you talk about cholera, whether you talk about tetanus, wound infections, septicemia, and these are most of these particular, even some of your skin disorders can be also a resultant impact of these. And if we talk about those parasites, and basically those parasites, whether it is through mostly your plasmodium or maybe ucharya. So definitely it is through your human excreta, blood and body fluids in poorly managed sewage system, hospitals. So definitely they can give rise to like your kalajar, maybe malaria sort of thing. So that means what we understand, that these infectious, if it is going to be an infectious waste, definitely based on the nature of microorganisms which are associated with it, whether it is bacteria, whether it is your virus, or whether it is your parasite. So definitely those nature of manifestation or those sort of diseases which is going to be coming out of this, so they will differ. Now we need to have a proper biomedical waste disposal, that we understand, because as it was very sensitive and difficult to handle, definitely we need to have that sort of practice of handling this waste basically. So for that, what we need prevention of disease transmission, and if this particular biomedical waste, if it is not properly disposed, so definitely can serve as a breeding ground of bacteria, viruses and other pathogens that we have seen. And we have also seen that what those pathogens or those particular microbes can impact. We need to think about this protection of your healthcare workers, basically who is going to handle this waste or who is going to manage this waste basically, and workers and the public in larger context, right. Improper handling, basically if it is accidental peaks or exposure to toxic chemicals of biomedical waste, can pose serious health risk to healthcare workers and waste management staff and even the general public as well, because we have seen, because of transmission through those particular infection, that can create a havoc to the public in large. And then definitely the environmental safety is going to be very important, because as I said, that biomedical waste can pollute your water body. That means most of your natural resources, whether you talk about soil, whether you talk about water, or whether you talk about air. So if this is going to be contaminated, or if this is going to be polluted, definitely, and if you are going to not dispose it properly, definitely these are the resultant outcome, and these are the the first component which is going to be impacted. So these toxic chemical, whether you talk about dioxin or furan, and pharmaceutical residue, maybe rich in your heavy metals or maybe some carcinogens, so they can leach into your environment and contaminate your soil, water, plant, animal continuum. That means from soil through water it can move to your plant, and ultimately it is going to move to your animal. That means that particular transfer is always possible, and if it is happening, so definitely we can understand that what would be the hassles we have to face. Legal and regulatory compliance, this is a must, particularly once we are talking about this particular handling of this sort of waste. So most countries across the globe, they have that sort of in place particularly, and they are trying to evolving that sort of, and they are continuously working on that, on this particular biomedical waste disposal. So there are in the country itself, if we look at India biomedical waste management rules, we have medical waste tracking act in United States, and also we have those particular guidelines, because whether you talk about the state pollution control board, whether you talk about the central pollution control board, or whether you talk about in the larger context WHO. So we have all those guidelines. So non-compliance, if somebody is not just going ahead with that sort of thing, so definitely in that case it is going to be a non-compliance, and that can result in legal penalties, fines and reputational damage of those particular healthcare institutes. And reduction of this is going to be very important, particularly with reference to your microbial or antimicrobial resistance. Improper disposal, if it is, and particularly with reference to bacteria, so this is going to be severe. So this improper disposal of antibiotics and pharmaceutical waste can contribute to your antimicrobial resistance. And then those antibiotic is not going to work, particularly for those regular cases. So when antibiotics enter into your environment unchecked, bacteria can develop resistance and making infection harder to treat. And the final one is your ethical and aesthetic considerations. This is unmanaged, if it is not properly managed, definitely this biomedical waste in public spaces or near healthcare facilities not only pose your health risks, but at the same time it creates an unpleasant and unethical situation, because this is also very important, particularly if we look at those particular attaining those sustainable development goals. So I was talking about those biosafety, and this biosafety level is going to vary, across different tiers. As I said, that this biosafety is essentially a preventive concept, means what, and it consists of a wide variety of your safety precautions that are to be undertaken either singly or in combination, means either it can go alone or maybe in consortia it can work, and depending on the type of hazard of all medical, nursing and paramedical workers as well as by patients and attendants and ancillary staff and administrators in a hospital. So what we understand is this is not something a single individual cannot attain, or somebody can attain that sort of biosafety. Everybody has to take part in that process, whether you talk about the patient, whether you talk about those particular workers who is working in the particular health facilities, right, or whether it is the other contenders in that particular the whole chain. Everybody has to be there. So we'll be just looking at those biosafety level 1, and basically this work involving well characterized agents and not known to cause any disease in healthy adult humans, and of minimal potential hazard to lab personnel and the environment, and minimal precautions are needed, and most likely involving either globes or maybe some sort of facial protection. And the biosafety level 2, basically this is going to work with your work involving agents moderate potential hazard and to personnel and the environment and restricted access. And definitely chances of infections are always there. So training on the hazards of infectious agents, sterilization of the waste standards and sharps handling etc. has to be done on regular basis. And immunization if it is available, because if somebody is working on some deadly organism, definitely one need to go ahead for immunization, and if we are working on that particular biosafety level 2, definitely we have to take care for that. And if it is biosafety level 3, here clinical, diagnostic, teaching, research or production facilities in which work is done with indigenous or exotic agent which may cause serious or potentially lethal disease as a result of exposure, maybe through your inhalation route as well. So that means one need to be very careful about once somebody is working at that particular level. That means if somebody is working at biosafety level 3, and higher level of training and supervision is needed. Biological safety cabinets means separate chambers, 2-door airlock system, immunization precautions are always there. And biosafety level 4, this is the higher level of it, definitely work with dangerous and exotic agents. That means definitely you have to take more precautions with reference to either immunization or taking care of making multiple layers. So definitely this poses a high individual risk of aerosol transmitted layer or infections and life threatening diseases. And so definitely it is going to be handled until we have sufficient data and obtain to confirm work with them. So once somebody is allowed to work on these, definitely there are certain precautions need to be there, and we need to have that definitive set of database before we started working in a biosafety level 4 lab. In the beginning I mentioned that once you are going to handle this biomedical waste, definitely one is this biomedical waste generation is one part, but at the same time you need to have some sort of very rigid plan, and once somebody is having that sort of rigid plan, so you need to implement that. So for implementing you need a very vibrant team as well. That means you need to have those management planned as well as the team also. And then definitely training component will be there, sensitization and then sampling and then storage and then leveling and then ultimately finally making it for further use. So for that, and transportation will be also involved. So we are just going to now look at particularly with your waste management team and plan, and which is very important. And particularly once we talk about any waste management team, definitely head of the hospital or whoever it is, he will be there in the team. And if you talk about that particular waste management team, definitely it is going to implement this particular waste management plan. So that means, as I said, that at the top definitely apex your head of the hospital is going to be there, and head of hospital other departments. That means departmental head will be also involved in that team, infection control officer and nurse, and then your chief pharmacist will be there, matron or senior nursing officer will be there, hospital manager administrator, and hospital engineer and technician. because these people will be involving, particularly the last two is going to involve particularly with reference to your transport, your storage, and then and particularly managing that particular waste, and then leveling those particular waste. So these people will be involved, and these people will just make that sort of plan related to that, what should be that, and what is that the necessary data related to how many surgical operations is being done, how many treatments or how many patients are being visiting that particular premises. So those things will be taken care of from these people, and then once it is there, and then definitely the next people will be active to work on that. So that means what is outcome of that particular sort of exercise is definitely you need to have a well-rounded team. And well-rounded team, once I am saying well-rounded team, that means you need to have a waste management officer. So basically, who is going to oversee the entire process, ensuring compliance with regulation and standards. That means whether it is complying your state government pollution control board, or whether it is central pollution control board, or whether it is WHO. So he has to be well aware of what is happening and what are the amendments that are being made, particularly with these standards. And then healthcare workers and nurses, doctors, laboratory staff I already mentioned, and then support staff, which is basically who will be involved in that particular collecting, transporting and managing those waste. An environmental expert, definitely we need to take help of them also, because they will be able to talk about their their manifestation, that what is going to be the output if we are going to mismanage it, and what may be those consequences in your ecosystem. So they will be able to guide on this particular context. And then finally you have your compliance officer, who is going to ensure your adherence to local and national regulations, starting from your municipal authority to finally your state pollution control board, and finally your central pollution control board. And if somebody is looking for international regulations, definitely he will be looking for those WHO guidelines as well. So this biomedical waste management plan definitely having multiple component, as I was mentioning from the very beginning. That means definitely with reference to those segregation policy, and has to be a very rigid segregation policy based on the nature of waste, whether it is infectious or whether it is a semi-infectious, non-infectious, carcinogenic, heavy metal, radionuclides, so whatever it is, and then collection and transport. So one need to design those routes and vehicles for those waste transportation to avoid contamination. Use of barcoding system, tracking that particular waste, that where it is now located, so one can always do that. And treatment methods, as I said, that one may have incineration, one may have autoclaving for reuse, or maybe chemical disinfection. And then disposal measure, means secure your landfilling, or for those treated waste residues, recycling for non-hazardous materials like, as I said, glass or metals. And monitoring and reporting, that is also very, very important in the whole process. Means one need to make that sort of regular auditing on that to ensure compliance on that, and submission of annual reports to authorities like your central pollution control board, that how they are managing the whole waste, and what is that particular possible routes that they are following. So this is very important. And awareness and training, this is time to time the authority has to make people aware that what are the amendments, the recent or the changes that have been made, and so based on that one need to be refined themselves. So regular workshop or healthcare, for particularly healthcare staff, posters and information material, healthcare facilities to encourage proper practices, that need to be done on regular basis. That means I mentioned about that waste management officer. So definitely he or she is having this sort of responsibilities. That means the planning or related to the formulation of that particular waste management, subsequent day-to-day operation, how he is going to work on that, and monitoring of your waste disposal system, and produces a draft of that particular program. And this draft is going to address the following issues: present situation regarding the waste management, quantities of waste generated and the points of generation, the type of waste of each point, and possibilities for waste minimization, reuse and recycling, what those particular agencies are doing on that, and waste segregation, on-site handling, transport and storage practices, identification and evaluation of waste treatment, disposal option, training, estimation of cost related to this particular, biomedical waste related all issues. So definitely he is going to handle all of them. And once he is going to handle all of them, definitely, the next component is your training of your biomedical waste management. So overall, the purpose of this particular biomedical waste management training is we wanted to make sure that the hospital managers and administrative staffs, they are all aware, they are aware of that what needs to be done and how it is, how they are going to implement that, the role and responsibilities of healthcare personnel to overall these. And definitely the staff education program, I mentioned that sensitization related to all aspects of your waste policy and those technical instructions. There may be few technicalities are always involved in this particular, and adequate education and training for your health personnel about your handling waste. Regular workshop and monitoring, ensuring or adherence and safety protocols has to be done. So the purpose is one need to make people aware, and that sort of awareness is related to your health and safety, environmental issues need to be done, and role and responsibilities of the healthcare personnel, that has to be always be there. Today's class, so what we have seen today, that during once we get that sort of biomedical waste, definitely there are multiple strategies need to be developed. So best we need to have that sort of biomedical waste management plan in place, and then we need to have a team to work on this particular waste and how it is going to be monitored at each level. So definitely for that we need to have that sort of segmentation. So by this we are now in a position to understand that at different levels of your handling this waste, and the sensitization is very important, and that particular know-how is also very important at each level, whether those particular workers who is handling those waste, or those particular medical practitioners who is going to ultimately make those particular waste in a particular segmented position. And finally, once it is being transported, so what needs to be done? So everything has to be done in liaison with all those waste management, particular plans, on the waste management officer has to be always in compliance with this. Going through this particular class today, and I am going to extend the further parts of this biomedical waste management, related to your regulations in the next class.